Hi there, my name is Darcy Engelhardt, and I'd like to welcome you to the Unreasonably Grateful podcast, Living in Grace by Choice. So I'll take a moment and just kind of review a little bit about how this all got started when we first kind of went into the experience of COVID. I wanted to be able to stay in touch with people, and I was used to a lot more personal contact. And so the idea of the podcast came about as a way for me to share with you tidbits from my stories and just download some of the wisdom that I've gleaned over my soon 39 years of recovery after living an addictive lifestyle, healing from teenage sexual abuse, and then living with an eating disorder for 20 years. As I say 39, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how could that possibly be? Because I can remember when I couldn't get past a day without being completely consumed with either getting food or getting rid of food, avoiding food, finding food. Like, it's wild when I think back now. And I'm so grateful for the journey of recovery and wherever you might be in that spectrum. And a lot of times we don't even think of ourselves as addicts who are just struggling with life and some of the circumstances of life. And it doesn't really matter where you are on that spectrum. This is simply about life skills that will help us navigate our day-to-day world and become a bigger, better, more beautiful version of ourselves, which you deserve to be. You were created to be. And so I know I learned from other people's stories, and if you can glean something from my story, then take it, run with it, share it, add it into your tool belt and help you navigate your relationships, your emotional well being, your physical well being, your mental well being. We can all use a little bit of support. And so if you get that from here, I'm grateful. I also offer individual sessions on Tuesdays. And really, what the opportunity of that is for you to be able to have reflected back to you a version of yourself that probably contradicts that internal chatter that you have about who you are and how you should be different or where you should be different in your life or how you've messed up and all of those kind of negative self talk recordings that go on over and over and over again for years and years and years and basically are based on some lie. And as an elder in the community, I get the honor and the privilege to share with you who you really are, who I see and who I hear, and hold that vision up for you until you can claim that vision for yourself. So if that's something you're interested in, you can sign up on tersyengelhardt.com under the topic of work together. Okay, so this particular session is called We Create Our Relationships, and it comes out of a couple conversations that I had this week with a couple of different people. And I do spend a lot of time with people significantly younger than myself, and my life's been designed that way. I always have. And it feels good to actually be able to encourage people along their path, particularly in the area of relationship. Now, I'm the first one to admit that how people meet, what dating looks like, is different than it was when I was in my 20s or 30s. However, I actually think it's the same thing. And I want to propose something to you for you to consider. Because lots of times, and many times in my life, I've heard people say, the choice that you make in a life partner, whether that's a wife, a husband, is one of the most important choices you'll ever make. Now, I could agree. I can agree with that. But I think sometimes where people look is to their past, like who have they been, or even who are they now, rather than who are they becoming. And I know when this context changed for me, it changed the trajectory of my relationships. So I want you to consider that we create one another. And one of the ways that we do that is how we hold space, how we give room for people to grow and develop for the context for our relationship, if your relationship is about becoming the best version of yourself, then it's the becoming that matters most. So, what's going to be most important is that you find someone who's interested in living in that context for a relationship, that you're really about causing one another. Now, I'm not talking about fixing or changing. I don't even recommend that you go into a relationship thinking you're going to fix or change someone, because who are you to know anyway? However, I do believe that in the space that we create for one another, in the words that we use, in how we listen, in our actions and our attitudes, we actually create the opportunity for the best version of that person or those people to become who they were designed and created to be. So there isn't any way, there isn't like a person that you can look at and say, they tick off all these boxes and that makes them a perfect candidate for a relationship with me. Because here's the thing, you're becoming too. So if you pick someone that fits how you view or see yourself, but you're becoming as well, that pick may not have anything to do with supporting or partnering with the person you're becoming. And the same thing would be true for them. But if the context for a relationship is becoming, we're actually holding space for one another. So what does that look like? So somebody's in an upset, somebody's having a tough time. You don't go to this place of judgment or criticism. You actually listen. You be with them. You maybe ask questions. You support them. You encourage them. And sometimes you just do nothing and give them the freedom and the opportunity to navigate their own kind of murky waters of developing themselves. Same thing's true for you. You go through a tough space. They do that for you. So you're always looking to see, what can you say? What can you do? What are the beliefs that you have? How can you support that person in becoming the best version of themselves? And obviously, the partner you pick is somebody who's up for this context and relationship, and they're willing to do that same work for you. And when you're not, you apologize, you clean it up, you make amends. Because we're not always. We get to where we're just fed up. I'm tired of this. You've apologized so many times, but you keep doing the same thing. These are all things that we've heard when working with couples or people in relationship. So remember that one of those tools is acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is calling out the best in someone. An acknowledgement is for a quality, a way of being. And you can always acknowledge someone for something. There doesn't have to be evidence for it. You can pick any quality, any divine quality, and acknowledge them for being that way, especially if you can't see it or don't experience it. Because part of acknowledging is realigning yourself with that divine aspect in someone else who your shaded view or tainted vision of them has no longer allowed you to see or experience it. So when you call it out, now you're actually looking for it. It's like you're seeking it and it will show up. But you don't call it out to get it to show up. You call it out to realign your vision with that divine quality in another. And all divine qualities exist in each of us, whether we experience them or not. And oftentimes, the ones we don't experience are the ones that have never been acknowledged. And by acknowledging them, they begin to grow, they begin to flourish. So, we've talked about acknowledgement before, and I can't tell you how valuable it is. Like, some people will say, oh, when we first got married, it was so blissful. And culturally, we say, oh, yeah, you were just in like the honeymoon phase and that'll end soon. But why does that have to happen? Why are we creating that as a cultural norm? So consider that the honeymoon phase is simply your vision is not yet tainted. You haven't gone through months or years of relationship and gained a view of who they are, gained evidence for who they are, how they respond, what they do, what they don't do, and collected all of that into like a mental file. And now that's who they are. And because that's the projection you create, it's difficult for them to be anything else in your view because you can't see them any other way. That's why acknowledgement helps you shift out of some perceived perception of this person and allows you begin to expand and see the truly rich, full, divine being that they are. So I want you to take that on this week, like really practice it and trust that there is no way any relationship is new, old. There's no way a relationship is. You create it. You create it every day in what you see and what you do and the attitude that you have and your willingness to show up and cause that other being to be the best version of themselves. And the same thing would be true for them with you. So take that on this week and see if you can't notice how different relationship is when you're not looking for the evidence of a fit, but instead you're willing to create the most extraordinary relationship you could ever imagine as possible. And I'll be here next week and I'll see you then.